Oh, hello there. Looks like you've tuned in to learn about section 2.2 and 2.3, which are about adding and subtracting integers. The essential question for today is, how do I add and subtract integers? And remember, when I say integers, I mean both positive and negative numbers. So I'm hoping by the end of today, you will learn to love negative numbers just as much as Grumpy Cat. I especially like Grumpy Cat because I had a friend in college who was Grumpy Cat. So every time I look at this, it just reminds me of the good old days. Anyway, back to the math. We're going to be doing problems like this. You have seen these problems before, but I'm going to give you a specific way of thinking about them that I think will make it much easier for you than trying to memorize a bunch of rules. I only have 3 rules for you. These are the only rules you'll need. First of all, 2 minus 3. If I see something like 2 minus 3, I can think of that as the same as adding 2 plus negative 3, okay? So 2 minus 3, same as adding 2 plus negative 3. Similarly, if I have 2 minus negative 3, that is the same as adding 2 plus 3. You may have heard before that 2 negatives cancel out to a positive, and we're going to make use of that in our problems today. We will talk more about why 2 negatives cancel out to a positive later on. So yeah, I'll leave that. Last thing, if you ever find a plus minus pair, they cancel. And I'm going to talk about what a plus minus pair is when we get to them. But just know for now, plus minus pairs cancel. All right, you ready to do some examples? I certainly am. Let's do them. Example number 1, 2 plus negative 5. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, just from previous things like keep, flip, change, or I don't know what method you used to solve these problems before, but here's how I think about them, and I think this is really, really good. Think about this positive 2 as literally a pile of 2 positives. Like positive 2 literally means 2 positives, draw them out. And yes, you're actually going to be tested on your ability to draw these positives out and reason through things the way I want you to in this video. So pay attention. Next, I'm adding to it negative 5. And when I say negative 5, I mean literally a pile of 5 negatives. Now, remember when I said in the previous slides that plus minus pairs cancel? Here's what I mean by that. If I have 2 positives here and 2 negatives here, each of those plus minus pairs cancels to nothing. They cancel out. This plus minus and this plus minus canceled. There are a couple ways to reason through that. First of all, what's 1 positive 1 minus 1? Isn't it 0? Okay, so that's basically what I just did. I just took positive 1 minus 1 and I canceled. It canceled to 0. Here's another way of thinking about it. I don't know if you've ever read the book Angels and Demons by Dan Brown, but it's about antimatter. There's this thing called antimatter, and scientists kind of think that it exists, or maybe they know that it exists, but it's kind of a mysterious thing. It's like the opposite of regular matter. And every time antimatter and matter come into contact, they do this. They just like explode. It's very bad. They negate each other. I think that's what happens. Even if that's not what happens, let's think about explosions because it's fun, and I just wanted to put an atomic mushroom cloud in this video. So there it is. Plus minus pair. Think about it as matter and antimatter. It cancels out. So what am I left with? Well, I'm left with a pile of 3 negatives, or in other words, my answer is negative 3. So 2 plus negative 5 is negative 3. And that's a good visual representation of it, using the pluses and minuses. Here's that mushroom cloud again. Pretty cool. Was it funny that I used that? Were you laughing? Here's my next example. I have negative 7 minus 5. Now, I'm going to make use of another rule that I told you, which is that whenever we see a minus, let's think about it as adding a negative, okay? So I'm thinking about -7 plus -5. Now keep in mind that this -7 literally means a pile of 7 negatives. Yes, there they all are, 7 negatives. This -5 literally means a pile of 5 negatives, and I am adding these piles together. Now, do we see any plus-minus pairs? Because if we do, I can cancel them and they'll explode in a lovely flaming mushroom cloud that also looks like a tree. I don't see any plus-minus pairs though. There just aren't any there. Instead, what I do see is I see 12 negatives. So in other words, if I'm adding this -7 to this -5, now I have 12 negatives. Or in other words, my answer is -12. Next example. Remember how I said the other rule you needed to know was that if there are two minuses, they cancel out. And again, I will give you more justification of that later on, but just know for now, two negatives make a positive. So I'm doing 6 plus 3. Now, this is a really easy problem, I know, but let's think about this just in the picture that I've been making. This 6, this +6, literally means 6 positives, a pile of 6 positives. This +3 literally means a pile of 3 positives. Do we see any plus-minus pairs? No, I just have a pile of 6 positives and a pile of 3 positives. When I add up those piles, I get 9 positives. In other words, my answer is 9. And any elementary schooler could tell you that 6 plus 3 is 9. So that makes a lot of sense. Finally, in this example, I don't really have anything I need to change in my signs. It's pretty clear. I have a pile of 4 negatives, and I have a pile of 9 positives. Now, this one is looking like another one where I'll need to cancel. That's fun. I like canceling. Let's just count these up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Perfect. All right, now remember, every time I see a plus-minus pair, they explode into oblivion, or you could just think to yourself, 1 minus 1 is 0, so of course a negative and a positive cancel. They are opposites. So they've gone away, they have canceled. What do I have left over? I just have 5 positives, so it looks like -4 plus 9 is 5. Easy. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, this is silly, I'm going to have way bigger numbers than this, or I might have fractions, and I say to you yes to all those things, and in a later lesson, you will learn how to use these piles to figure out general rules. But for now, just know that thinking of integers as piles of negatives or positives can really help you solve these problems. We will learn more complicated ways of doing them later on. Thanks for watching.